Well, it's been my birthday for about 11 minutes. This video is for a YouTube subscriber named Hello, Hello. Um, Hello typed the dismissive stuff that we always get as victims when we try to speak out. Hello doesn't mean anything insulting by what he or she is typing, but it's the same racism and the same sexism that we have to deal with. The and although he or she may not mean it this way, it's an excuse to ignore it when it happens to somebody else. White privilege is just such an excuse. We get told about white privilege. White privilege does not exist when you're homeless. It just simply doesn't. There are about 60 million black people in America. They account for 22% of those killed by police. The homeless have only 1/120th the population of black people at 500,000, and yet they account for 49% of those killed by police in 2019. So 1/120th the population size is still well over double the amount of homicides by police. But there's no homeless lives matters, is there? If I say that my life matters, I could get shot for being a racist. That's just insane. There was a woman right before I was locked up. There was a woman who was shot in the head for saying all lives matters. Now this woman had been, well, in many parts of the world saving lives. She was shot in the head. She also happened to be a white girl. So we don't carry it on as long. It's more socially acceptable to kill a white person now. That's insane. Killing somebody should be wrong no matter what. Now we get to see a lot of posts from BLMs that show the difference between black people and white people. And in reality, it's not the difference between black people and white people. In reality, it's the difference between upper middle class and rich white people and poor black people. It's horrible. Poor white people are not treated any better. Now, I get white privilege. I get it. There's a marginal difference. I say marginal because, by comparison with the homeless situation, it basically doesn't exist. See, let me tell you about Boulder, Colorado. In Boulder, Colorado, a black person is 5 times more likely to be incarcerated than a white person. There's also a very, very small population of black people in Boulder, Colorado, so that doesn't equal out to a whole lot. But then you've got to worry about people like Mark Swanigan. Why was Mark Swanigan such a powerful influence on those numbers? Because the police loved messing with Mark Swanigan. Was it because he was black? No, mostly it was because he was homeless. They didn't treat him a whole lot different than any other homeless people, except on one occasion when a couple of college girls that were pretty white girls were flirting with Mark Swanigan, and the police had a problem with that. I'm not going to pretend that racism doesn't exist, but when we're talking about a 5-to-1 ratio, that's pretty hefty. Now, that's not saying that for every one white person in Boulder County Jail that there are 5 black people locked up. That's not even close to the case. See, those numbers are based on the population size and the, of course, skin color of the people in that population. If there are not a whole lot of black people in Boulder, Colorado, let's say 1% or 2% of the population of Boulder, Colorado are black, right? And then they are incarcerated at a 5-to-1 ratio for their population size. We're still not talking about a whole lot of black people that are locked up. But when we're talking about homeless people, 81% of those incarcerated nationwide are homeless. 81%. A lot of the things that I hear about black people and BLM, about how those numbers are doctored because police are more likely to not care if you're black. Well, they're also more likely to not care if you're homeless. See, the homeless aren't incarcerated at a 5-to-1 ratio. It's a 346-to-1 ratio over their housed counterparts. Yeah, where's your white privilege? My white privilege is offset by the fact that because of my skin color, I'm not allowed to work together collectively with groups of white people to fight for my rights. We got special rights all over the place. Special rights for women, special rights for black people, special rights for immigrants. There are no special rights for white people. There are no special rights for men. There are no special rights for the homeless. And although there are plenty of special rights for the disabled, they are not observed. The only way to get them observed is to have, well, y'all have probably paid some attention to the Britney Spears situation. You need somebody like that. You need not a curator, but basically a guardian. You're not going to be allowed to do it yourself. That's where most people's ideas of what I should be doing go right out the fucking window. Their ideas are based on what they're allowed. The fact is, the most victimized people in America are having to take a back seat because we're focusing on groups like BLM. I would rather just pretend that BLM doesn't exist and actually fight for the rights of black people. Actually fight for equality. Actual equality, not special rights. In the 1950s, they passed laws making special rights for black people. In the 1960s, they did the same. In the 1970s, they did it again. In the 1980s, they did it again. In the 1990s, they did it again. In the early 2000s, they did it again. After 2010, they did it again. And now they're going to do it one more time. And the thing is, they're passing the same laws over and over and over again. What point is there in passing more laws when they are not observed and have not been observed since the 1950s? Special rights don't work. They create more division, and we need unity. Special rights just for colored people. Can you imagine that? That's how the Nebraska law is wanting to write it in. They're going to give special exceptions for people of color. Well, all right then. But now you are again ignoring the most victimized people in the country, and they're not victimized based on their skin color. They're victimized based on financial status and ease of victimization. See, here's the thing about predators. Predators don't go after the toughest person. Predators are all cowards. All of them. All predators are cowards. Every single one of them. So I'm going to read here what Hello typed. And I do believe that it's important. And I believe that Hello's opinions are valid. All of our opinions are valid. Some of them are incredibly stupid and not thought out, but they're still valid because it helps to prove a point no matter what. If your opinion is completely stupid, it's still valid as an example. We got plenty of examples from that at the Battle of Midway and at the Battle of the Coral Sea. Hello typed, this video is really moving to me, but I have one small criticism of your words. As anyone can conclude from your channel, you have had one of the hardest lives possible. That is true based on where I'm at. There are a lot of people who probably have it worse. But then again, we're having to work with completely different socioeconomic issues. A lot of places in Africa, once you become an adult, the village helps you build a house. There's no property taxes. It's just a matter of gathering the materials and building it. Here in the United States, you're not allowed to build that way, and the taxes are through the roof. The land cost is through the roof, and the materials that you're allowed to use come from the lumber yard. If they don't, you're probably going to get into a lot of trouble. If you own the place, you can get away with a lot, but once you try to sell it, that's when you encounter problems. Did you get a license for this? Did you get a license for that? Do you have a permit for this? Do you have a build permit? Do you have a fencing permit? Do you have a permit for that sign that's in your front yard? Have you paid your property taxes? Oh, your property taxes are going up. Woohoo! It's pretty expensive just to have the basic stuff that you can get in Africa for being born into a village. But what parts of Africa? Anyway, let's read this. I should probably read it all the way through. This video is really moving to me, but I have one small criticism of your words. As anyone can conclude from your channel, you have had one of the hardest lives possible. You have had such hardship and terrible things happen to you. However, by just looking at you, most people would assume you wouldn't, because at first glance, you have some privileges, i.e., your skin color, gender, etc. Now, at first glance, you would assume that these are privileges, but in reality, they're not. Because I'm white, I'm told I got to go to the back of the bus. Other people's rights are more important than mine. Fighting for those other people's rights is more important than fighting for my own. This is how it is thrown at us, and the men part as well. But well, I've got a few videos on that already. However, you and those who are aware, this is what it says after color, gender, etc. It says, however, you and those who are aware of your life know that you still suffered a lot. I'm assuming that in your eyes, the way some people, especially left leaning folks, makes those assumptions of your privilege upsets you a lot. And see, this is the thing about Hello. Hello's opinion is valid here. Hello is not trying to be rude or inconsiderate. Hello is not blaming me for being victimized. Hello is not even at this point insinuating that I couldn't be victimized because of the color of my skin, which is very important. Left leaning folks, usually the people who tend to lean to what you call the left are the ones who actually fight for our rights. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. would have been considered an extreme leftist. He's also my favorite hero of the 20th century. Now let's get back to what this says. But my qualm is that you need to consider that a lot of the time, those quick visual assessments have some truth. Some, depending on the situation. Like Demetrius Shankling. If he'd have been homeless, nobody would have given two shits. But he comes from an upper middle class family that really did care. He was a CU student, so people cared. If you're a college student, somehow you're more of a human being than a homeless person because you have greater opportunities. Here in the United States, who you are is based entirely off of the opportunities that you start off with. Now, maybe you can do well for yourself and do well for others with everything going on, but in reality, it's not an easy thing to do. Let's see. It says, those quick visual assessments have some truth, despite the fact that people like you exist. And that's true as well. It also says, I also would recommend assessing who the people making those assumptions are. They're not all, or mostly, people in groups that are immediately assumed underprivileged based on their visual identity. Therefore, it isn't completely fair to point a finger towards them. In conclusion, I have utmost sympathy for you, but I think you can be a powerful ally to groups who are commonly viewed as underprivileged as well as an advocate for those who aren't, like yourself. I really wish you the best and thank you for spreading powerful messages. Just so you know, Hello, I do speak out for those underprivileged groups. Just because I don't believe in all of BLM's rhetoric doesn't mean that I can't still fight for the rights of minorities. And I do, because that disparity does exist. compared to the disparity that the homeless people have to go through, it's almost not worth mentioning. And I say that because that's how I get treated when I bring up homeless people's rights. I get blown off or made fun of or teased or picked on or told all sorts of things that, I've heard people saying about black people my entire life. And that's something you'll notice about homeless people. All the stuff that people say about Jews when they're anti Semitic, people say about the homeless. The stuff that people say about Satanists, they say about the homeless. The things that they say about Native Americans, they say about the homeless. The things they say about black people, they say about the homeless. The things they say about immigrants, they say about the homeless. But the difference is black people are protected, Native Americans are protected, women are protected. All of these different groups are protected, but the homeless are not. There are no special rights or special laws or even equal rights or equal laws for the homeless. None. It's an economic issue. Now, seeing all this stuff about how basically black people should get away with being racist, that's not something that I'm going to subscribe to. Racism is not okay in any form. Yes, I am a powerful ally to many of these groups. I speak out about missing and murdered Indigenous women for a reason. I speak out about how black people are treated for a reason. My friend Todd is half black. It doesn't matter to most of the world. Most of the world sees him, they see a black man. If this situation that happened to me had happened to him, well, chances are pretty good that the cops would have shot him, closed Natalie's case, and called it good. They probably would have celebrated by calling up Domino's, ordering a pizza, and tipping the guy who killed Natalie $20. I use my white privilege, but my white privilege doesn't mean a whole hell of a lot. It'd be better off if I were black. If I were black, BLM might give a shit. But as we've seen, many members of BLM and BLM itself ignores the crimes that have been committed against black homeless people. And that's just disgusting. What, they're not black if they're homeless? They're not worth helping if they're homeless? That's gross. I need people to help fight for my rights the same as I fight for BLM, the same as I fight for MMIW. No, I don't agree with all of the rhetoric in BLM. I certainly don't agree with MMIW, and that's not because the victims somehow magically deserve it, because those victims don't deserve that. What bothers me about MMIW is the fact that it was MMIP, missing and murdered Indigenous people. But you got to understand the American mind frame. In the American mind frame, men cannot be victims. In order to get the sympathy that you need, to get the attention that you need, in order to get the help that you need, you have to appeal to the American masses. If you say it happens exclusively to women, or you market it exclusively the victimization of just the women, people tend to care more. And that's really sad. There are a lot of men and boys who are victimized that are Native American. And yes, I speak out about that. Yes, I posted up about the males who disappear as well when they come across my screen. Now let's get on to this conversation with Hello, because there's more to it. A lot of it I didn't even read. I replied to it without reading it. How rude is that? Let's see. I wrote, I believe in equality and I fight for equality. There are some groups and some individuals within certain groups that I don't agree with, like BLM. but I still fight for the rights of black folks. My skin color isn't a privilege when combined with poverty because most people use it as an excuse to do nothing or to blame me. Meanwhile, the numbers show that the disabled and homeless are killed at a much higher rate by law enforcement, incarcerated at a higher rate, and have less chance of being heard. It is popular to blame white males for everything these days, and that narrative kills a lot of innocent people. We work together, or divided we fall. Hello replied with, "This is super long. I'm going to read it because it would be rude of me not to. Also, if I pause quite a bit during this, I'm sorry. It's the first time I'm reading through it. I might be surprised by something typed. Hello, typed Sean David. Hi, Sean. I completely understand what you were saying. However, your skin color is a privilege on its own. See, here I am trying to get help, and I'm getting the privilege thrown in my face. This is literally an excuse not to help. So why bother typing to hello? Well, for the same reason that I have this channel, to change minds and to show the truth, to get an honest day in court and to fight for our rights. If you want to fight for black rights and you actually give a shit about equality, you can't fight for black people. You have to fight for the homeless. They are literally the only group that you can fight for if you care about equality. Any other group, you're going to end up with special rights, like what they're doing here in Nebraska. The most victimized people are the homeless and the disabled, but they're being completely left out and completely ignored by this whole situation. They're the most victimized people in America by the police. They're the most murdered in America by the police. They are the most victimized by the American public, and they are the most murdered by the American public. But we're supposed to ignore them because when you're homeless, your life doesn't matter. Your life doesn't matter to BLM. It doesn't matter to MMIW. It doesn't matter to these women's liberation movements. Meanwhile, nobody wants to look at all of the racism and sexism the white males have to put up with. And then we got black privilege. What is black privilege? It's not just the support of BLM. It's not just the support of literally millions of white people in the United States. Yes, that is right. There are literally millions of white people in the United States fighting for the rights of black people. Are these people fighting for the rights of the homeless, though? No, the homeless don't matter. They should. They're still human beings. Anyway, it says, "Hi, Sean. I completely understand what you were saying. However, your skin color is a privilege on its own. That is an undeniable fact. You know what? If you're going to use that as an excuse to ignore the crimes against me, that's racist. You are literally saying that I am privileged to be abused at this point. Of course, I'm not okay with that. You are literally using this as an excuse to ignore my issues. Now, you're typing to me, so you're not completely ignoring it, but you are completely sidestepping and ignoring the issue at hand, much like BLM has done with police brutality. See, a lot of people wanted to support BLM at the beginning because they thought that it was going to do something about police brutality. Because in the last 120 years, for the last 70 years, we've popped the same special rights over and over and over again, and it has done absolutely nothing. Writing the same law and rewriting it every 10 years to say basically the same thing does not get those body cameras on those officers. It does not get those body cams turned on. It does not get that body cam evidence admitted into court. It's horrible. Now, although Hello doesn't seem to think that Hello has done anything wrong in this, and obviously, there are people who are going to be confused because this person's tag on here is Hello. Mine is Sean David. There's a lot of other channels that have their own names. It's just strange that Hello is their name. But a lot of street people, they use different names too. There was a guy named Rick Duran. He went by Shadow. Yep. A lot of people, when they become homeless, they get a tag and they stick with that. They don't want people to know their real name and they want a name that sounds cool. Anyway, let's read what else it says. It says privilege is a spectrum, and therefore almost everyone is given privilege by at least one aspect of their identity. And that, I suppose, is true. However, when it comes to equality, privilege does not breed equality, it breeds inequality, it breeds tyranny, it breeds hate and discontent. It's not just white people who are pissed off about the laws that were made in the 90s that require a certain amount of minorities be hired. There was a couple of black rappers and producers that moved their entire companies off coast because they didn't want to hire white people. They wanted to hire just people from their neighborhood. Now, if a white person does that, they're called racist. But if a black person does this, it's not considered racist. It's considered helping out your community. Why can't a white person help out their community? Why is it that if a white person tries to help out their community, they're called racist? They're treated like they're horrible monsters. That's definitely not okay. How about I throw women's privilege and feminist privilege and black privilege in people's face every time they bring up the fact that they were victimized? Oh, the police beat you up because you were black? Well, you've got black privilege, so it should be okay. Is that okay? No, the fuck, it's not. The thing is that the way that they type it shows that they're not going to do anything to help. They're not going to spread my story. They're not going to tell others what happened. It's not like with Elijah McClain, where a lot of people posted it up all over the place. It's not like with Zayd Atkinson, where people posted it up all over the place. People would have listened to me had I been a pretty white girl. That is a fact. Because I was not a pretty white girl, because I'm a male, I was assumed to be guilty. Because I was forced into homelessness, I was assumed to be a druggie or worse. That's not okay. And telling me that I have white privilege will never make it okay. Black privilege, that is the privilege that you get of you can go start shit with a white person and take your aggression and your hatred and your anger out on a white person and then pretend that they called you the N-word and you have no idea how many times that scenario has gone down in front of me. I grew up in the system. Most of the people I grew up with were minorities. Most of them. And I have seen so many times, likely in the hundreds, if not more, where black people have started a fight with somebody who is white and smaller than them in an institution, often as a group of black people against this one white individual. And then they get away with it by claiming that this poor white kid called them the N word. Obviously, you don't have to call them the N word for it to be a hate crime. See, that's the thing the Zayd Atkinson situation showed. Although he was treated better than any homeless people in Boulder, Colorado by them fucking cops, it was claimed that it was racially motivated. No, the fuck it wasn't. They saw him looking like many other homeless people in Boulder, Colorado, made bad assumptions, and then it was too late to turn back. Now let's continue reading this. Let's see, given privilege by at least one aspect of their identity. However, that one aspect usually doesn't overrule other aspects that may take away privilege. Well, that's a good point. See, Hello is not an idiot. Hello is obviously an intelligent person who thought this out based on their point of view, based on their experiences, based on what they've observed. Personally, I think more people should spend time homeless so they know what we're up against. Let's see. The combination or intersection of these aspects of identity are basically intersectionality. As you said, your skin color does not make you privileged because many other aspects of your identity, i.e., socioeconomic class, neurotypicality, etc., seem to overrule your skin color privilege. All of that just shows that skin color is not always the largest indicator of privilege. That's right. Looks and money are the largest indicators. People will do stupid things for a pretty face, both men and women. Let's see. It says all of that just shows that skin color is not always the largest indicator of privilege. There are many other large ones. However, skin color is often the bigger one. Not always, like in your case, but very often. My point is that groups like BLM and more act for social justice based on usually one aspect of identity that takes away privilege. It often seems like their focus on a singular aspect harms less seen aspects of identity. A really good example is disability and ability. Um, and I'm going to stop and break that down for a second. It says, my point is that groups like BLM and more act for social justice based on usually one aspect of identity that takes away privilege. And that's a good point. See, here's the thing is that the issue, what BLM was started for, was police brutality, specifically police brutality towards black people. But the rest of us, the rest of America, was also given promises and given hope that was false, that maybe BLM was fighting for our rights. And many people have made that claim that BLM isn't just fighting for black rights, they're fighting for all of our rights. But in reality, they're not. They are specifically fighting for special rights, specifically due to skin color. And we've been waiting for the movement to break open. People like me who have been fighting for MMIW and MMIP. We keep hoping that BLM will pick up that cause too, because it is just as important. But they haven't. If this is a group that's fighting for our rights, they need to fight for our rights. And don't tell me they're fighting for our rights if I'm not included in the rights that they're fighting for. They're fighting for black rights. I'm not black. So even though I spread the word about how horrible it is that minorities are treated this way, I'm treated worse. I don't know anybody in my life who is black who has been beaten up more times over their skin color than I have. I grew up in the system as a white boy. You damn right I got my ass kicked. A lot. I was about 12 or 13. I got into a fight with a kid and I beat him up. He didn't like me because he was new to the place. He was taught, oh, well, you go in there and you beat up the biggest guy that you can find. Well, he got there and he saw the biggest guy in the place. That was Tim. Tim was a big sumbitch, too. And that kid decided, well, I'm not going to fight with that guy. He's too big. Then he looked at somebody that was about his side and went, well, I might lose the fight. These people are crazy. That's the way that everybody assumes when you're in a lockup that you must be in a lockup facility because you're crazy, whether it's juvie or a mental institution or whatever. So anyway, this guy decided, oh, well, there's this tiny white kid. I could beat him up. Well, he didn't. He didn't beat me up. He lost in grand fashion. And the other kids in the institution took away his black card. You know what that means? That means they gave him worse hell than they gave to any of the white kids. He was not allowed to sit with black people. He wasn't allowed to talk to black people. And when we sat in the day room, he had to go sit on the white side of the room. It was not a segregation that us white kids chose. It was a segregation specifically chosen by the black kids we were locked up with. We were white, so we were the enemy. And that's just simply how it was. You have white skin, so you are the enemy. It's horrible. And after that, seeing what they did to that poor kid just because he got beaten up by a white boy. And I remember them screaming too, "You best not let that white boy punk you. You better not let that white boy punk you." Well, I wasn't punking him. I fucked him up. Keep your nasty cock beaters off of me. I know you come into that place and you think you got to make a name for yourself on day one. You don't. It's best to mind your business and read some books. Let's see. Let's get further into this. Um, it often seems like their focus on a singular aspect harms less seen aspects of identity. A really good example is disability and ability. What I'm trying to say is that yes, BLM does focus only on skin color, a singular aspect of identity. And yes, in a way that overshadows voices like yours. But you have to remember that that is simply because we as a society don't make enough room for voices. And see, obviously, Hello is not an idiot. Hello is making some very good points here. The points that are off base are based on experience and understanding. Now, the ones that are definitely on topic, these are also based on that particular person's understanding of the situation. A lot of people, their understanding of the situation is non existent, but they want to put in their 2 cents in anyway. And that's just stupid. If I got somebody who's a nuclear technician and I've got a situation where I'm on a nuclear submarine and there is a problem with, well, the nuclear electronics and I need a nuclear technician, I'm going to want to listen to a nuclear technician who knows what's going on. Listening to a 5-year-old is probably not going to get you the help that you need to make sure that that submarine does not have a meltdown. Taking the word of a janitor, and yes, I know there's lots of you who saw Good Will Hunting. Sure, great. Yeah, every janitor is like that. We can totally believe that. But obviously, it's not true. Just because you're a janitor doesn't mean you're highly intelligent. I was a janitor. I'm highly intelligent. But I worked with a lot of other janitors who were not that intelligent. And I also worked with other janitors who were highly intelligent. But none of us had a nuclear technician degree. None of us know the first thing about nuclear technology. And if somebody needs help putting a submarine back together before it goes critical, we're not the dudes to fix it. You're going to want a nuclear technician. Now, for a lot of people, they don't need to go to college for this. You do need to go to college to become a nuclear technician, but you do not need to go to college to learn what other people are going through. You don't have to go to college to step into another person's shoes. The reason that I still fight for black rights is because I can put myself in those shoes because I have been there. I have experienced racism. I have experienced having to fear the police because I was homeless. And the homeless do have to worry about being murdered by the police a lot more than black people do. A lot more. They also have to worry about the fact that nobody's going to hear them. And if they are heard, they're not heard by people who care enough to do anything about it. Well, let's see, what else did this person write? Let's see. Simply, let's see, don't make enough room for voices. It should be BLM instead of disability. It shouldn't be BLM instead of disability advocacy. It should be both and more. And that right there is 100% on topic. We, the victims, need to work together. That's the biggest problem I have with feminism. Feminism is not about equal rights anymore. It's about exclusion. It's about special rights. It's no longer about doing something about sexual assault. It's about arguing over who is the most victimized and who can or cannot be a victim. Most of these feminist groups, when a male has been victimized, we get it shoved down the same stuff that gets shoved down our throats about BLM. We're men, so we need to shut up. We're white, so we need to shut up. We need to go to the back of the bus. Our voices don't matter. I personally believe that black people's voices matter. I personally believe that women's voices matter. I do. But why doesn't mine? Why is it that the groups that I am fighting the hardest for are the ones telling me the most to shut up? I have to fight for black people's rights. Those are my rights too. I have to fight for women's rights. Those are my rights too. But I'm not fighting for special rights. I am fighting for equal rights. If it is wrong for a woman, it is wrong for a man. If it's wrong for a man, it's wrong for a woman. Not this special rights crap where it's specifically only wrong for a man to do. And if a woman does it, it's a man's fault. That's not okay. Now let's read some more of this. Well, that part where it says it shouldn't be BLM instead of disability advocacy, I agree. It should be BLM and disability advocacy and homeless advocacy. Matter of fact, we should ignore all of that and just fight for homeless advocacy because that covers black people, that covers disabled people, that covers men, that covers women, that covers whites, that covers natives, that covers immigrants, that covers people who were born here in the United States of America. It covers Jews. It covers Christians. It covers atheists. The homeless cause is the only equal rights cause that actually exists in this country. It's the only one that can result in equal rights. Not a single one of these other ones is going to result in equal rights. They all result in special rights, which creates this division. Having it thrown down my face and thrown down my throat that I'm white, when I bring up the abuse that I've gone through, don't bring up the fact that I'm white. Don't. Understand that I am victimized. Every time that you bring up the fact that I'm white, you are basically trying to discredit me and my abuse because I'm the wrong color to be abused. I still fight for black rights, despite the fact that I don't agree with BLM rhetoric. I still fight for black people's rights for a reason. I grew up in the system. I know the disparity. I know that racism exists. I live in Chapel, Nebraska, where people yell N-word lover at me. I was hated in high school here because I fought for homosexual rights. There are kids that I went to school with that I knew they were gay, but I didn't go telling the rest of the town about it because I didn't want those people victimized. And I still fight for their rights. Here in Chapel, Nebraska, I moved here over 20 years ago, and I've been fighting for homosexual rights here that entire time. And it's getting better, slowly but surely. Let's see. It should be both and more. I think instead of trying to make disability advocacy louder by trying to quiet BLM, you are sending out the wrong message. I'm not trying to quiet BLM. I'm tired of people with BLM making every excuse to treat me like shit, even though I was victimized in the same way. I'm tired of being treated like I can't be a victim because I'm the wrong color, or that my cause doesn't matter because I'm the wrong color. Police brutality is the issue. We need to do something about police brutality instead of arguing over who is the most victimized. Because it's not black people. It's not. It simply is not. They do not have the numbers to win that fucking argument. Let's see. You are doing exactly what you perceive them to be doing. Exactly. Exactly. I am doing exactly what it is that bothers me, because explaining that it bothers me gets me treated like shit because I am the wrong color. It is racist. Just like all of these posts that I see popping up on Facebook about men this and men that. It's a bunch of man bashing. Now, if you change one word, just one word in that, change the word men to women, and you will get a 30-day ban. No joke. These things that people find acceptable and funny when men are the targets, it's not so funny the other way around. It's not a hate crime to do it to men, but it's a hate crime to do it to women, isn't it? When you're talking about white privilege, my privilege is to be ignored by the people who could make a difference. My privilege is to be victimized repeatedly and told that I deserve to be victimized because I'm a male, or I deserve to be victimized because I am white. Being told that I have privileges that I don't have. Meanwhile, yes, I do have white privilege. There are aspects of white privilege that I do have, but they are overshadowed by the fact that I'm white. Matter of fact, they are heavily overshadowed specifically due to the fact that I'm not black right now. I'm not trying to quiet BLM. I'm trying to fight for equality. BLM is after special rights. Now, although it's a good thing that here in Nebraska they're saying people of color instead of just for black people, so BLM in the long run has done at least something for other people of color. But that is not the type of laws that we should be writing. They are racist laws that avoid the socioeconomic issues altogether and make it just about race. How many of those black people that were victimized were homeless? How many of those black people were actually committing crimes? We can't just assume that they didn't commit a crime because of the color of their skin. Just like we can't just assume that because somebody's white that they did or did not commit a crime. Crimes are not committed by skin colors. Anyway, it says, you are doing exactly what you perceive them to be doing. And yes, I am. I am making a very specific point. If you are going to treat me that way, I can treat you that way back. Natalie Bollinger got to understand that on a small point of view. While I was being threatened and harassed and assaulted, I was cursed at a lot. When I tried to get her help and I was nice about it, I got treated like shit. I got victimized a lot. And to this day, I get treated like I'm some sort of child molester or rapist because I stood up for myself. A man is not allowed to do this, especially if he is white, especially if he is broke. If you are a rich white man, yes, you have all these privileges. But I'm not a rich white man. Let's see. Now, me doing and saying the things that they're doing and saying to me, does that mean I agree with it? No. It means I'm fighting fire with fire. I'm telling you that these things are cruel things to do to me, and you're making excuses why they're okay. It must be okay. But if I do this same thing that you have done back to you, you don't fucking like it. People don't like it when I treat them the way that they treated me. The other thing is, most of these people will never be treated the way that they treated me because I'm not capable of doing that to another human being. Let's see. It also says, I think working alongside organizations like BLM, not necessarily endorsing their every move, but at least acknowledging and promoting their main message. And I do. I have been since before there was a BLM. I've been speaking out about Chapel, Nebraska since I first moved here. One of the first thing I noticed in this town after growing up with minorities and then getting dropped off at 15 years old in Chapel, Nebraska, a place that there's no blacks or Mexicans. It's all white people, and they blame everything on blacks and Mexicans. It's blacks and Mexicans' fault that they're broke. No, they're broke because they spend all their money on booze. If you spend all your money on booze, you don't get to blame black people and Mexicans for that. And as a result, I've been fighting for minority rights in Chapel, Nebraska since 1995. That's a lot of years ago. That's over 25 years. So, yeah, I don't endorse their every move. I do acknowledge and promote the main message. But the main message, I personally believe, is wrong. I do promote it to some degree, but I am fighting for equality. If there are, let me give you an example. Let's say there are 100 million survivors of sexual assault in the United States, and 30% of them are men. So 30,000, or sorry, out of that 100 million, we'll say 30 million of those people, it's actually only 29 million, but we'll say 30 million of these survivors of sexual assault are male, and that the other 70% are female. All right. I'm not going to ignore 30 million people who are victims of sexual assault because we want to specifically focus on women. No, sexual assault is wrong. That is the issue. Everything else is just a sideboard. Everything else is just an excuse. Everything else is the blame game. Go after the predators, not the other victims. And that's not what we got here. We've got many members of BLM victimizing other victims of police brutality because they're white. I'm not going to ignore white victims of police brutality. I'm not going to ignore male victims of sexual assault. It's not going to happen. The problem with police brutality is that it is police brutality. No matter who it is towards, it should be illegal. Not just illegal when you do it to somebody with a different skin color. Now we get to see with people like Waylon Lolatai how skin color does not detract police brutality. Waylon Lolatai gets off on that shit. Anyway, it says you will create bonds that allow smaller voices to be heard. That's what I'm saying. Also, if you have time to read, I have a little more to say. Well, I will make the time to read. Believe it or not, I take the time to read all of these. Not because I am having the same difficult conversation within my family. Allow me to explain. Recently, my mom and I have been having conversations about a topic that frequently turned into arguments. To give a background on my mom was an older mother. Throughout her life, she struggled with fertility and relationships, etc. Her past problems range from sexual assault to abusive relationships to toxic parent relationships to suicide attempts, and also some minor microaggressions surrounding her minority religion. However, my mom is white and we are very stable financially. Our family was not always that way. So my mom doesn't support BLM. Like you, she thinks that the movement implies that people who are not black have not suffered at all. And see, this is one of those things that, and no, I haven't gone through every time that she made one of these assumptions about how I think and how I believe. I didn't go pointing them all out because there's a lot of them in here. Her assumptions are based on her level of understanding from her point of view, not from mine, not from my shoes. So although her assumptions are wrong, she's allowed to have them. Her assumptions about me are incorrect. Her assumptions of what I think and how I think are incorrect. But that doesn't make him or her a bad person. It's their level of understanding. Um, let's see. Uh, my mom doesn't support BLM. Like you, she thinks that the movement implies that people who are not black have not suffered at all. Um, see that right there. That's not what I think it implies. It says, so my mom doesn't support BLM. I do support BLM. I absolutely do. I don't support racism. That's what I'm against. People telling me that hate crimes can't be committed against me because I'm white. Well, there are more hate crimes against the homeless than all other hate crimes combined in the United States times 5. There are more hate crimes committed against the homeless, which is a population of only 500,000. That's only 1/120th the size of the population of black people. There are 5 times more hate crimes committed against the homeless people than all hate crimes committed against black people, and all hate crimes committed against Native Americans, and all hate crimes committed against sexual predators. Oh, and by the way, I do need to bring this up. The FBI does consider targeting a sexual predator as a hate crime. If somebody rapes your daughter and you target them, you have committed a hate crime because it's against the law to target somebody who has molested a child or been a rapist. But it's not against the law to target a homeless person. Now, when I say there are more hate crimes against the homeless than all, or there are more hate crimes committed against the homeless than all other hate crimes combined times 5, that's not even counting police interactions. And as I've said before, 49% of those killed in 2019 by police, 49% of those people came from a population of 500,000. 22% of those came from a population of about 60 million. Obviously, the homeless have it worse. Let's see. It says, like you, she thinks that the movement implies that people who are not black have not suffered at all. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that BLM and many BLM supporters are supporting a racist narrative. They're ignoring other victims as if other victims don't matter. And in many cases, targeting other victims, just like these feminist groups do with any man who speaks up about his sexual assault, about him being sexually assaulted and him being victimized. Many of these feminist groups target male victims. How horrible is that? Let's see. It also says, what I think she fails to see is what I just described to you above, however. In situations like hers and yours, it's really hard to have these conversations because the possibility of you or my mom feeling like your trauma is invalidated. It is invalidated, and that's the point. Every time you throw white privilege in my face, you are invalidating the things that I have gone through. Every time you tell me about white privilege or male privilege, you are being toxic. You are sidestepping the issue altogether. You are invalidating it because you are not fighting for my rights. You're telling me that I need to support BLM, but BLM has shown that it is not going to support me or my rights. I fight for black rights because black people are human beings to me. I fight for women's rights because women are human beings to me. In all of these cases, I am not fighting specifically for black rights or specifically for women's rights. I am fighting for them to have human rights. And I am fighting hard for me to have human rights. And I have less human rights than either one of those groups by a long shot. And hello typed at the very end. That's why it's a very hard thing to discuss. It is. It absolutely is. I don't say that white people are victimized to contradict you. I'm saying it because it's a fucking fact. I'm not telling you about the male victims of sexual assault to contradict you. I'm telling you because it's a fucking fact. And yes, I'm cursing. And no, hello, this is not specifically targeted at you. That cursing is because I am aggravated as all fuck. The other victims of Waylon Lolatais had their court dates. They had help. Waylon Lolatai had to move on. But at the same time, the outcome of the things that I had to go through that people don't want to hear about and want to ignore and pretend that they couldn't happen to me because I'm white. That's not okay. And hello, obviously, isn't saying that these things didn't happen. But hello has this opinion that I don't fight for BLM, that I don't fight for black rights, that I am not fighting for any of these organizations. She's trying to convince me that I should be working and supporting BLM, and I absolutely do. I just don't support the racist aspect of it. White people have less rights than anyone else, except for the homeless. There are no special rights for black people. No, there absolutely are. There are no special rights for white people. That's the point. If you are homeless, disabled, white, and male, you're fucked. The only way out of that situation is for someone to care about you enough to fight for your rights, because you are not allowed to fight for your own. Now, I'm going to click the like and the heart on Hello's comment there, because it was well thought out. I typed, hello, continually pushing the white privilege thing is an insult, even if you don't mean it that way, because it comes from a place of misunderstanding. I'm trying to get help. Instead of helping, I get white privilege shoved in my face, which is not only racist, but it is victim shaming and blaming. How about black privilege? Like the fact that although there are many special rights for black people, there are none for white people. Equal rights are humane. Special rights are racist. I'm going to make a video for you that I hope will explain it better. Or that I hope will explain it. And I hope I have explained it. Being told that I'm not doing enough for BLM, that I need to be working with BLM, that I need to be selling their narrative. I'm not going to sell their whole narrative. There are parts of it that I know are true, and I'm going to speak out about those. I have been speaking out about them, and I have not stopped speaking out about them. I know that white privilege does exist, but it's a terrible excuse to ignore the victims. Oh, you were raped? Well, we don't care because you're a male. You were assaulted by the police? Well, we don't care because you're not black. Instead of doing something about the real issues, we're making it a camp. The black camp, the native camp, the white camp. All these different camps with different beliefs and different opinions. None of them are fighting for equal rights. None of them. BLM is supposed to be about equal rights. It's not. It's about special rights. and I'm not okay with that. Modern feminism is not about equal rights. It's about special rights, and I'm not okay with that. We work together or we get nothing. But when we're working together only for a specific group, and we're all pressured as if we owe it to this specific group to do something, even though we are doing plenty and nobody is doing anything for us, we are still expected to do more. No matter what, we're not giving enough to Black people. We're not giving enough of our time to Black people. We march with BLM and are told we're not doing enough. When Black people are killed at BLM rallies, we're going to see their faces on the internet probably till the end of time. But those white people that were killed protecting Black people at these BLM rallies, their names were forgotten after a month. They were made out to be predators by the law enforcement community, by the news community, and even in some cases by BLM itself. My question is, why is it that I have spent so much time fighting for people who don't give a shit about equal rights? Why am I spending so much time fighting for Black people who are not fighting for equal rights? Or Native Americans who are not fighting for equal rights? Or women who are not fighting for equal rights? If these groups are after special rights, I don't want special rights. I don't want special rights because of my skin color. I don't want special rights because of my gender. I want equal rights. I want to have the same rights as a woman. If I am pulled over, I should have the same rights and opportunities as a woman. Women are pulled over at an equal rate to men, but men are 6 times more likely to get a ticket. Over 70% of domestic violence and physical violence victims are males and boys. The majority of these assaults are committed against men. There are more assaults by women towards men than the other way around, by a lot. And the man is just expected to take it. No, if a woman hits a man, she deserves prison time. She does not deserve a free pass because she has a vagina. Having a vagina does not make it okay to hurt people. Having a vagina is a terrible excuse to let people who are violent get away with it. I'm not going to pretend that every woman out there is like that. I'm not going to pretend that every Black person out there is like that. I'm also not going to pretend that every white person out there is like that. Every time that I see men, or white, I make a video that obviously, well, she says I'm being a hypocrite, and I know that I'm being a hypocrite. I know it. When I say women, I know that I'm being a hypocrite. That's the point. Show you how it feels. I have never told a Black person that they need to get to the back of the bus about their problems. I have never told a woman that she has to get to the back of the bus about her problems. I'm not saying that these folks should drop their issues. What I'm saying is that if you are going to expect homeless white men who have less rights than anyone else, if you are going to expect homeless white people to fight for your rights, you should be fighting for theirs as well, because that is what equality is. Now, here's a person who typed to me earlier calling themselves Jimmy Gem. It says, Let's see. This is from 2 days ago. It says, just found your channel. I am glad I did. It's very refreshing to see someone stick up for the good men out there. Thank you for your wonderful common sense and amazing logic. Um, let's see. I guess there's 5 replies. It didn't tell me all these replies. That's interesting. Here's somebody calling them Kenny McCormick typed, welcome to the army. Jimmy Jim typed, yeah, man, welcome. I'll hit like on both of those. I also typed, my name is Sean Schwartz. I am autistic and a victim of repeated assaults because I'm different. I got 3 likes on that. It's all about the likes, isn't it? Jimmy Jim typed, it sucks that you had to experience what you've been through. I don't have the words to fix that. However, I can say welcome, Sean. Sounds to me you are a legend. Chin up, brother. More power to you. Respect from Australia. And I replied, a legend? How do you mean? And thank you. I also typed a link and I wrote, I was sent to Clearview when I tried to turn in Waylon Lolatai, where I was drugged and assaulted. I spoke out. Nobody listened because I'm a homeless, disabled male. I was forced into homelessness when Natalie was killed. And then there's a second link, and I typed with it, when Natalie was killed, I was assaulted by Officer Waylon Lolatai and others and charged with assault to prevent me from turning in my predators. I believe there was 3 or 4 of those that I actually typed, but it's tough. It's tough when you're going through the same things that these black folks are going through, and at a much higher rate because you're homeless, to be told that your rights don't matter or that you don't matter or that you need to get to the back of the bus because you're not the right color to be victimized. You're not the right color to have a voice. You're not the right color to have your voice heard. You're not the right gender to have your voice heard. What that all comes down to is that no matter what, there's going to be some excuse why I'm not human enough for fighting for. And it all comes to religion, looks, money, gender, and skin color. We keep getting this narrative thrown at us that black people can't be racist. We keep getting this narrative thrown at us that women can't be sexist. And I say that is complete horse shit. If the difference between it getting banned on Facebook and being allowed to stand is whether you type the word men or women, well, we've got far worse problems because it is socially acceptable. It is Facebook acceptable. Sexism on Facebook is okay as long as it's directed towards men. Racism on Facebook is acceptable as long as it's directed towards white people. And YouTube ain't a whole hell of a lot different. Now, I've noticed that nobody else has typed anything on here, and I'm fine with that. Usually by this time, somebody's typed something. Usually it's one of my trolls, like Rich Life of, who, well, on just one of my videos last week, just one video, they had 3 or 4 different Rich Life of accounts that commented on it. And it's always the same shit, talking about telekinesis and Ativan. What a troll. Anyway, when it all comes down to it, we're all human beings. We are all stuck on this planet together, and we either work together for all of us, or none of us deserve a goddamn thing.